About 2.5 years ago, I was lying on the floor after my great-grandmother's funeral. My arms were flailing. I couldn't stop them. No one knew what was happening. That night marked my first visit to the emergency room and a turning point in the relationship between my mind and body. Prior to my symptoms, I was a typical overachieving high school student. Going into high school, I wanted to find myself, so I participated in every single thing I possibly could. I pushed myself both curricularly and extracurricularly. I didn't understand how unhealthy this was. When my sophomore year began, I was still of the same mindset. I was taking a heavy course load and had no study hall. I was also doing soccer refereeing, running cross country, and participating in marching band. I felt that in order to be successful, I constantly had to be busy. Many of you probably feel the same. Society has taught us that downtime is a waste of time. I believed this. The weekend of my great-grandmother's funeral, I had packed my schedule as full as possible. I saw a concert 2 hours away, and then ran a cross-country meet, and then went to a band contest, and then had church, and then finally the funeral. I didn't see any reason to be concerned. I had been pushing myself this way for years. After the band contest that Saturday, I began to feel woozy, almost as if I was going to pass out. Everyone thought I was experiencing dehydration or low blood sugar, and there was no reason to worry. The next day, sitting in church, the same thing happened. A few hours later, I was flailing, unable to stop for over 3 hours. The ER doctors believed I was having side effects from strep. I was fine the next day. That was until the seizures began. Either my head had to be rolling back and forth, or my arms had to be flailing. I couldn't control any of it. I ended up back at the ER, but they released me, saying I was stable. From there, I was referred to a neurologist. It took 3 days of writhing on the couch, trying to do homework in between seizures, for me to get in and actually see the neurologist. My appointment began with an EEG. This is where they attach electrodes to your head and watch your brain waves. During my EEG, I actually had a seizure, but nothing abnormal showed up. The neurologist diagnosed me with PNES, Psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. During psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, people are fully conscious, and I could even talk during mine. Convergent disorder is what PNES is a subset of. Convergent disorder basically means the body is experiencing physical symptoms due to mental stress. It appears differently in everyone. Some common examples of its manifestation include blindness, paralysis, trouble walking, seizures, and tics. Some people can go for years without getting a proper diagnosis. I am so lucky I was quickly diagnosed. The neurologist told me I could control the seizures to an extent. I felt like I was suddenly given some sort of power over this mysterious condition. But it took a lot of mental energy. If you've ever tried meditating, it felt similar. The level of energy required to let in 0 thoughts while you are meditating was the level of focus I had to maintain to not go into a seizure. As you can imagine, focusing this much several times an hour was heavily draining. I went back to school the day after my neurologist appointment. My teachers and friends were so supportive, and it was only for a half day. Even though I'd worked hard to develop some sort of mental control over my seizures, certain things would still trigger them, like the metronome in band, or even just being stressed about a test. These things would shatter any sort of mental barrier I'd built up, and I'd end up in a seizure. It was hard to be stared at while having them, but I was open to anyone who asked, although not that many people did. I had seizures on classroom floors. I had seizures in the bathrooms. I even had a seizure while racing a cross-country meet. Eventually, I developed enough mental control over my seizures that they stopped happening entirely. I was seeing a counselor to help better manage my stress, and I pushed through the rest of cross-country and marching band season. But after those seasons, it seemed my body could no longer manage. I couldn't walk without being slumped over, my arms dangling in front of me. My eyelids would droop, and my face would start to flare. It looked something like this. Once again, I couldn't control any of it. I ended up back at the neurologist, and he confirmed it was my body manifesting my stress in a different way. From this, I knew conversion disorder had struck me again. But this time was different. Instead of being put back into most of my activities, I was limited to one activity a night. This drove me crazy. My mom's favorite phrase quickly became realistic expectations. In other words, I wasn't allowed to push myself to the limit on her watch anymore. I went back to school in a wheelchair, but I had better things to help me control the conversion disorder this time. I had my understanding friends, my previous experience, and my counselor. All of these things and people helped me once again to overcome the disorder. I still occasionally experience symptoms. Just this fall, while racing a cross-country meet at the same place I previously had a seizure, I began to feel woozy, almost as if I was going to have another seizure or something. My eyelids began to droop. But after I finished the race, my dad made me move and just not dwell on it, and I didn't have a seizure or any other major conversion disorder symptom. According to therecoveryvillage.com, conversion disorder impacts anywhere from 200 to 300 people in 100,000. It is around 200% more common in women than men. It also affects around 25% of psychiatric outpatients. I want to emphasize, being stressed doesn't inevitably lead to conversion disorder. Nevertheless, taking care of your mind and giving it breaks is crucial for everyone. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health, if not more so. There are so many ways to work on your mental health. I utilize downtime as an important resource, but there's something out there for everyone. I also learned just how important it is to wield all of my resources. I began to slowly build my activity levels up, beginning with one a night, but never to the overwhelming point I was at prior to conversion disorder. I learned my limits and when I needed to take a mental break. Although these limits are different for everyone, it's crucial you know them, so you know when you're pushing yourself too hard. I also began to understand just how important sleep is for my body. I need a minimum of 7 hours of sleep to be fully functional the next day, something I wasn't getting before my seizures started. I also learned how essential counseling is for me. Even though I rarely experience symptoms anymore, I still go see my counselor. She provides an outlet for me to release my thoughts and feelings, and it's a safe space for me to just vent. I wish there was not such a stigma against counseling. Talking to someone not directly involved in the situation allows for a level perspective, which even now I need. Although it was the hardest time of my life, I am almost grateful I went through conversion disorder. However, I would never wish it upon anyone else. So maybe you can learn from my story. Maybe you don't need your body to start basically telling you to slow down and forcing you to take a break. Maybe this is your wake-up call. Learn how to become more in tune with both your mind and your body. Thank you.